was about the black hole of Calcutta. The black hole of Calcutta. Now, the story goes. It's true, by the way. In 1756, over 140 British subjects were imprisoned in a 5-by-4-meter dungeon room in Calcutta, which is in India. Only 23 of them came out alive. Now, if that was a Reddit post, that would be the TLDR. So I'll tell you the long version. The East India Company was trading on the Indian continent, and they had established a monopoly over trade, so they were like the dominant force. However, the French were beginning to compete. As a result, the British wanted to strengthen their fort in order to demonstrate military strength. However, during the period, the East India Company was kind of negotiating a unstable truce with nearby native Indian states and their ruling Nawabs. These people did not like the fact that the British were trying to strengthen their forts. And upon hearing the news, the nearby Nawab of Bengal rallied 50,000 troops, 50 cannons, and what I find the funniest, 500 elephants marching on the British fort of Fort William in June 1756. I always have a tendency to say 19th. I don't know why. Modernisation bias. Unfortunately for the British, the fort they were trying to renovate was in dire need of renovations. The mortars were too damp to be used, and their commander only had experience or military experience. He had none. He was a tax collector. With only 140 people against 50,000, the British understandably surrendered within a day. Now, when the Nawab of Bengal entered the city, he rounded up all the British soldiers and civilians, forcing them into the fort's black hole, which was essentially a dungeon with no window. And it was just intended for singular or very few petty criminals. Forcing 140 people in there meant the temperature went up to 40 degrees incredibly quickly. And in the intensely humid air, and the fact that there was no space for anybody. Over the course of the night, many died from suffocation and trampling. trying to break through the walls. But the captors only jeered at them. By the time the cell was opened at 6 a.m, only 23 were still alive. Now, it's a pretty gruesome story, but it's undoubtedly interesting. I used to have nightmares about being trapped in the black hole. Luckily, that would never happen unless I got I'm a Celebrity. If I'm ever on I'm a Celebrity, something's gone wrong. I'll tell you some facts now, and I'll probably end with another story. But, in keeping with the kind of morbid start, the year 536 was deemed the worst year to be alive. Which, given that there's been quite a few bad years, like maybe the Second World War, that's pretty bad. But this was because volcanic eruptions caused a prolonged dark sky because of all the ash for 18 months, which then in itself caused a mini ice age, leading to complete crop failure and plague, which killed millions. Which is pretty sizable for 536, when there was probably only a couple of million people alive. I don't know the figures. I do early modern history. And I don't even do that very well. But the next fact. It took longer, around 2,500 years for this, to go from copper to steel swords. Oh, no, that took 2,800 years. Then it did to go from steel swords to atomic bombs. 2,500 years. Which is insane. And they said we'd have flying cars. Where are they? I've always wanted to ride a hoverboard. I thought that would be the coolest thing ever. Surely we can do something like make the road one magnet pole and make a hoverboard the other, and do it really strong so I can hover. Surely that's possible, right? Any engineers, please credit me when you do that. Okay, for all of my US viewers, I think there's quite a lot of you. Your government injected young children with radiated material and studied them for decades. The worst thing is, they told the children they were participating in a little science club. When this was finally exposed, the government timed it so it would be exposed to the O.J. Simpson files, which is incredibly sneaky, but the government is pretty good at that. Now, I've spent 10 minutes talking about the macabre, so I'll give you some lighter facts. Since the sand in the Colosseum was used to absorb the blood of injured fighters. Or not, since, let's start that again. Me when I lose basic reading proficiency. When the Colosseum was used for fighting, they lined the arena with sand to soak up the blood. The Latin name for sand is harina, and that's why we call like our concert venues and things like that arenas after harina. Now, in my formal dinners, they speak Latin, and they definitely would have better pronunciation than that. But you get the gist. In 18th century England, pineapples were a status symbol. Anyone who was rich enough to own a pineapple would carry it around to signify their personal status. And they would decorate their interiors with pineapple, which is strange. Because pineapples are like nice, but surely I would decorate mine with grapes. Let me know what you guys would decorate with. Like, I feel like pineapple is a weird choice. Why couldn't you decorate it with chocolate? Or tobacco? Surely that's like cooler. Maybe I should theme this video Macabre facts, because I have some more. The Avengers, like you might have watched in the movies. I actually haven't really. Avengers and Marvel, I've just never really watched. But the Avengers were also a group of Jewish assassins who hunted Nazi war criminals after World War II. They poisoned 2,300 of them, which is a pretty sizable number. That's pretty intense. Now, the most famous female serial killer, as opposed to like Jack the Ripper or like Ted Bundy, was a Hungarian countess called Elizabeth Bathory de Exeter. I definitely pronounced that wrong. I apologise, anyone from Hungary. I went to Budapest in the summer and I loved it. I'm just really bad at pronunciation. She was accused of torturing and killing over 650 young women, mostly between the ages of 10 to 14. She must have been the original evil stepmom from Cinderella, because that's like rough. Oh. What do you mean? Oh. Okay. In ancient Asia, death by elephant was a popular form of execution. XVI and Marie Antoinette were beheaded. It said that people dipped handkerchiefs in their blood as souvenirs. In 2011, a group of scientists confirmed that a blood-stained handkerchief dated approximately from 1793 was soaked in the blood of Louis XVI. It's pretty grimy. 1, it must have stunk. 2, that's pretty insane. Okay. The fastest surgeon ever. I feel like this one's quite popular. I think I've heard this before. Caused a 300% mortality rate. Surgeon Robert Liston was considered the fastest knife in the West when he was performing a battlefield amputation. He cut through his patient's leg so quickly that he accidentally cut the fingers off the person who was helping him. One man who witnessed the surgery collapsed and died of a heart attack. And then not only did his patient die of blood poisoning, but also his assistant. Which wins him the award of being the only surgeon in history to have a 300% mortality rate. Which is pretty skilled, but also, like, really bad. Okay. I've got one more kind of boring fact. It's not boring. From 1912 to 1948, the Olympic Games also held competitions in the fine arts. So medals were given for literature, architecture, sculpture, painting, and music. Which I think is actually a really good idea. Like the old Eurovision. If only the music didn't have to be Olympic themed, which was one of the rules. Because, like, what would you even do? I love to sprint. That's boring. Anyways, I have the last 10 minutes. A really interesting story. This book, Our Island Story, it was the book that inspired my passion for history. I've kept it for years. It's a book that means a lot to me. And I'm going to read you the first story, which is about how England came to be England. It's fictitious, but definitely interesting. I apologise if this is loud. Okay. When she spoke, her voice sounded as soft as the whisper of the waves as they ripple upon the shore. She said, "Father Neptune, let Albion come to my island. It is a beautiful little island. It lies like a gem in the bluest of waters. The trees and grass are green, the cliffs are white, and the sands are golden. There the sun shines and the birds sing. It is a land of beauty." Neptune and Petrite immediately asked to see the island. It was a wonderful sight for them to see. As soon as the island came into sight, Neptune raised himself on a big wave, and when he saw the little island lying before him like a beautiful gem in the blue water, he cried out in joy, "This is the island of my love. Albion shall rule it, and Albion shall it be called." So Albion took possession of the island, changing its name from Samathia to Albion. Now, for 7 years, Albion reigned over his little island. After 7 years, he was killed in a fight with the hero Hercules. This was a great grief to Neptune and Petrite, but they continued to look over the island. For many years after the death of Albion, the island had no ruler. Until at last, one day there came sailing from the far off city of Troy a prince called Brutus. He, seeing the fair island, landed with his mighty men of war, conquering over all the giants, making himself king not only of Albion, but the surrounding islands. He called them the Kingdom of Britain, or Britannia, after his own name, Brutus. And Albion he called Great Britain, because it was the largest of the islands. Although after this the little island was no longer called Albion, Neptune still loved it. When he grew old and had no more strength to rule, he gave his scepter to the islands called Britannia, for Britannia rules the waves. Now, although that story is very likely completely false, it's difficult to say that it's not compelling. And it's stories like that that really attract you to history. There are many, many stories in the book. Most of the rest of them are all actually true. It goes all the way up to Queen Victoria. I can't remember what year it was published. Let's see. I think it's quite an old book. It was published in 2005. it's not as cool.